Small Axe Mangrove tells the story of the Mangrove Nine, 9 black men and women who were arrested and taken to court for the incitement of a riot against the Met Police. Mangrove is the first in a 5-part series from director Steve McQueen, taking a look into the real lives of black people here in the UK around 50 to 60 years ago. If you're in the UK, you can catch it on BBC iPlayer, and if you are in the US, you can catch it on Amazon Prime, and I think that probably goes the same for people in other territories as well. So in this video, I'll be looking at how Mangrove explores systemic racism and as to why it is still a problem 50 years later and was probably the spark for the BLM protests here in the UK in 2020. Welcome back to Hakuna MaChatter, your place for all things positive in diversity and representation in film and TV. So I've eagerly been anticipating the series Small Axe since its announcement earlier this year, and it kind of got me thinking about something that I did earlier this year actually, and that was during the main influx of the Black Lives Matter protests in early 2020, and I made a video that was a list of all the films, TV shows, documentaries that you can watch that will help you learn more about the black experience. Now, what I noticed is that all the films, shows and documentaries I chose were US based, and even though up to a point that kind of made sense for the time I was making that video because a lot of what was happening was over in America, when I actually sat down to begin to make a list of all the British shows, films and documentaries you can watch to learn about the black experience here in the UK, it was really hard for me to compile a list. In fact, I actually kind of gave up in the end because I was like, there's not enough to make as full a list as I did originally in the first video. You know, Britain, at least for me, is kind of infamous for never really owning up to its colonial past and the true atrocities behind that, and never really owning up to the racism that is deeply embedded within our systems here. And something that I've mentioned before is that when I was at school, at least in history, we never really learned about how black and Asian people truly came over to the UK, and if we did learn anything really, it was of Britain's heroic colonialism, and yeah, as I said, not about the atrocities that came along with that. Heck, I had only heard of the Mangrove Nine upon watching this film. So why does kind of that already tie into Small Axe? Well, as I say, I've only just heard of the Mangrove Nine, but what Small Axe, and in particular Mangrove, as this is the first of the 5 films to be released, does is that it gives us a snapshot into the life of black people in Britain 50 to 60 years ago. Finally, we're getting stories of the people who were living those lives, living in those times. And, you know, a lot of these people are still alive today. They are our grandparents, our uncles, our aunties, even our parents as well. And also finally, their story is not being told from the point of the lazy immigrant coming over to the UK here to steal jobs from the white working class. That's still a massive thing today. In fact, a lot of the Jamaicans, West Indians, people from Trinidad and Tobago and other Caribbean islands that came over on Windrush and subsequent voyages were coming over because they were invited. They were invited to find work here in the motherland to help rebuild after World War II. You know, they fought in World War II for the UK, and now they could move back to the motherland and work and live. And it was all perfectly legal. It was all perfectly lawful. They, as I said, they were invited to by their passports. They were allowed to by even British UK law. They were allowed to. And actually, as a side note, if you kind of want to learn properly about all of that side of it, I really recommend on BBC iPlayer watching David Olusogu's documentary, The Unwanted, The Secret Windrush Files, and you'll get an idea of the history of them coming over and actually how it kind of ties into modern society and the people that did come over that are still alive and living in the UK and how they are now affected. But what you'll actually also learn is that it wasn't just people from the Caribbean islands that were invited over, it was also people from Eastern Europe who were invited over to help rebuild the UK. And what you'll notice is that they didn't receive anywhere near the amount of discrimination that black people did. And I think it's here where Mangrove really does encapsulate the systemic racism of today in the UK. So all these films that Steve Steve McQueen has made are based on true stories, and Mangrove is based, as I said, on the Mangrove 9. And we follow one of them in particular, Frank Critchlow. And he was the owner of the West Indian restaurant The Mangrove, for which the film is named after. It was a West Indian restaurant that he opened up in Notting Hill in the late 1960s, early 1970s. And he is played here by Sean Parks. Now, his restaurant was victim to multiple raids within the first year of opening by the local police, Notting Hill Police, the Metropolitan Police, but there was never any just cause as to why they should be raiding him. They never found anything, they never had really any idea that anything was to be in there to find. They were just raiding because, well, it was a black-owned business. And it reaches the point for Critchlow where he ends up joining forces with two activists, Darcus Howe, and with the British Black Panther leader, Althea Jones, both played by Malachi Kirby and Letitia Wright, respectively. But what you'll notice is that how Critchlow resists going on the march originally. He resists taking action himself. He plays by the system. He files his complaint to the police. He writes to the council and the magistrate courts. And he even writes to his local MP. But all of it sort of falls on deaf ears. No one is going to put their foot forward and help and solve his problem for him. And it boils over to him, and so he joins the activists and he goes on this march, on this protest. Does this kind of sound sort of similar to things maybe people are experiencing in today's world? And on the march, we witness that the police are the aggressors. They are the original aggressors. They block the protesters in, they provoke them, and this is where things, I believe, kind of link into what we're seeing today. Now look, the Mangrove story doesn't stop there with the riots. In fact, that's not even what they're well known for. I will touch on that actually towards the end of the video. But there's that need to get out on the streets, to march, to protest, to have your voice heard, because once you've gone through all the proper systems, once you've tried to do everything that, I mean, a protest is legal, but you know what I mean, everything that the system sort of presents to you, and this is how you have to deal with these problems, when that fails, then that's when marches begin to happen. And you know, that's kind of what happened over in America with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. You know, it doesn't matter how many times you can try and vote in the right people and the right councillors and the right governors and senators and so on and so forth, and here in the UK the right MPs and the right governments, but if things aren't changing, and if after 50, 60, 100, 200, 400 years things aren't changing, people go and take to the streets and protest. What I actually find kind of interesting towards the beginning of this year is I had a lot of friends in the US asking me, you know, why are the UK marching? This is an American problem. And my only response to them was just a simple response of, it's not just an American problem. Now look, the UK does not face anywhere near the same amount of police brutality as America does, but our problems are still there. They're deeper, maybe, they're insidious, they're embedded into the system. And Mangrove does a great job of showing this. Look, here in the UK, disproportionality, as with the US and maybe a lot of other countries as well around the world, is a big problem. Yes, more white people may face arrest and criminal charges in the UK, but that's actually just because there are more of them. What you need to look at is, as I say, the disproportionality, the comparing the statistics to population sizes. You see, in 2018-2019, black people here in the UK were 8 times more likely to be stopped and searched. They were 5 times more likely to have force used against them by police, and they were nearly twice as likely to die in police custody. I'll leave a link in the description box to all these statistics so you can take a look for yourself, and you know, you will see that yes, more white people were victims of these 3 things I have stated, but when compared to population sizes, everything is far more likely to happen to black people. And you see, true stories such as the Mangrove 9 are still relevant in today's society, as I say, 50 to 60 years later. What the Mangrove 9 are best known for is their monumental win in their court battle. It was a 55-day long court battle which took place in the Old Bailey in London, a courthouse that is usually reserved for murders, terrorism and treason. Only 4 of the 9 were charged with minor offences, and all 9 got off from the major offences they were accused of. And actually, earlier this year there was a really good drama released called Sitting in Limbo, which was a true story about Anthony Bryan, who was a Jamaican-born British citizen. He lived and worked here in the UK for 50 years, and then in 2015, I believe it was, when the UK Home Office changed their hostile environment policy to immigration. He became a victim, saying that he had no right to live in the UK anymore and was going to be sent back to Jamaica, where he had no home, no real family, no life. You know, he had established himself, as I said, for 50 years here in the UK. And the amount of hoops him and his family had to jump and dance through in order to resecure his citizenship, to say, yes, I belong here, you know, this is my home, was very akin to the hoops that the Mangrove 9 had to jump through in order to win their court battle. I could see a very clear, distinct link there. And again, I will refer you to David Olusoga's documentary, as that will give you perfect context for both Mangrove and for sitting in limbo. But you know, after a while, it's going to tick over. It's going to reach boiling point, and 2020 has been probably the perfect ferryman for this, which is kind of a morbid thing to say, a ferryman, but you get what I'm saying, right? And you know, these incidents, these murders that happened all the way across the pond, they help to incite things over here. They expose the problems we have here as well. They were also the catalyst for things and protests to start here in the UK, because we're going through similar things, not the same things, but similar things, and people have had enough. So look, I'm really looking forward to the next 4 films from Steve McQueen and Small Axe. It's going to be really interesting. In fact, as I was writing the script for this video, the trailer for the next film was released, Lovers Rock. It's a short trailer, but there's enough in there that I'm excited for. I mean, I'm excited for the whole series, really. And here on Hakuna MaChatter, I will be covering each film one way or another. So if you want to make sure you are here for them, do make sure you subscribe, turn on that bell notification so that you know when the next Small Axe video is here and live and ready for you to watch, and join in the discussion as well in the comment section down below. And until then, make sure you check out these videos here, and I'll see you next time. Hakuna MaChatter.